You ever have one of those weeks where something small, something so stupidly small, just sets off a chain of events that changes everything? For me, it started with a damn mailbox. I'd lived in Willow Creek Estates for almost 8 years. Nice little community out in the desert edge of Arizona. Warm mornings, quiet nights. The kind of place where the HOA thinks they're guarding the gates of heaven. I bought that house after retiring from the Postal Service. 25 years on the job. Never missed a route. Never lost a package. I just wanted peace. A porch swing, a cup of coffee, and maybe a few marigolds in the front yard. Then one morning I walk out, and there it is. A bright yellow paper taped to my mailbox like a scarlet letter. Violation notice. Apparently, the bottom corner of the wooden post had cracked when a delivery truck clipped it last week. Barely noticeable, but according to the HOA, it was detrimental to neighborhood aesthetics. Fine, $250, payable within 10 days. I stood there holding that paper, half laughing, half wanting to throw it in the trash. Felt ridiculous. I called the HOA office thinking it was some clerical mistake. That's when I first spoke to her. "Good morning, this is Karen Davenport, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." Her tone was like polished marble, cold, hard, perfectly smooth. "Yeah," I said. "This is John Mercer over on Silver Pine Drive. I got a notice about my mailbox." "Yes." "Mr. Mercer," she cut in, "you were cited for property neglect. Section 5A, paragraph 2, neglect." I laughed. "It's a crack. You can't even see it unless you bend down and squint. Our standards are what keep this community beautiful," she replied. "If we let one mailbox fall apart, the whole neighborhood follows." I wanted to tell her about the irony, how I'd worked half my life delivering mail to people who never once thanked me. And now I was being fined because of the mailbox itself. But I just said, "I'll fix it." She hung up with a crisp, "Thank you for your cooperation." That was the first time I heard that phrase from her. It wouldn't be the last, so I spent Saturday morning sanding the post, replacing a panel, painting it white again. Looked good as new. I even added a little brass number plate just to make it nice. 2 days later, another yellow slip showed up. This one said non-compliant color tone. Apparently my white wasn't their approved shade of ivory. Fine now increased to $500. That's when something inside me snapped. Not anger exactly. More like disbelief turning into quiet amusement. I'd seen bureaucracies before. The post office taught me plenty. But this was next-level petty. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing a pattern. Karen and her little patrol, the same 3 board members, would stroll around the neighborhood every Friday evening with clipboards and iPhones, taking pictures of lawns, mailboxes, fences. It was like a mini dictatorship fueled by boredom and a sense of power. One day, I was trimming hedges when I saw them stop by my place. Karen leaned down, inspected the base of my mailbox, whispered something to the others, and snapped another photo. I waved. She didn't wave back. That night, I got an email. Failure to comply with HOA repair guidelines will result in further penalties. So I wrote back, maybe a bit sarcastically. "Understood. Would you like me to repaint the air molecules around it too?" We'll reply. By the end of the month, they'd added a daily penalty for non-payment, bringing the total up to $850. It was so absurd that I stopped feeling frustrated and started feeling curious. I wanted to understand what made people like Karen tick. See, people join HOA boards for one of 2 reasons: to help or to control. Karen was firmly in the second camp. She'd been president for 5 years, re-elected every term because no one else wanted the hassle. She treated every small infraction like a personal attack on order itself. But the funny thing about control freaks, they always underestimate the quiet ones. Around that time, I ran into Mike, our neighborhood mail carrier. Young guy, early 30s, good kid. He was sweating bullets in the Arizona heat when I offered him a bottle of water. We talked a bit, and he mentioned he was transferring out soon. Said the route was killing him. Too much walking, too many complaints from HOA Karens. He chuckled when he said it, but I could tell he was serious. That's when the thought first flickered. See, after retiring from USPS, I still had my federal certification. I knew that routes, especially contracted rural ones, could sometimes be transferred or bid on if a carrier retired or left. I didn't say anything to Mike then, but the idea stuck in my head like a burr. A week later, things escalated. Karen actually blocked Mike's truck one afternoon because he parked too close to a community flower bed. She stood in front of his postal vehicle, arms crossed, clipboard in hand, and told him she'd report him to the HOA board. I walked over, calm as I could. "Karen," I said, "he's the mailman. He's allowed to park there." She turned to me, eyes sharp. "He's obstructing HOA landscaping." "Karen," I said again, "you can't find the federal government." She glared, muttered something about rules are rules, and marched off. Mike just shook his head. "Man, I can't wait to get off this route." I smiled. "When are you leaving?" "End of the month," he said. "They're opening bids next week." That night I poured myself a drink, sat on the porch, and laughed for a solid 5 minutes. The desert was quiet, wind humming through the cactus fields, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I called an old friend, Charlie, who still worked in USPS management. Told him I was thinking of picking up a light route just to stay busy. He pulled a few strings, sent me the paperwork. Sure enough, Route 417B, Willow Creek Estates, available starting next month. I filled it out, faxed it back, and waited. When the approval letter came, I almost framed it. Effective July 1st, I, John Mercer, was the new independent contractor in charge of delivering mail to the entire Willow Creek subdivision, including Karen Davenport's precious house on Birch Loop. The day the first official uniform arrived, I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. It wasn't about revenge, well, maybe a little, but more about balance. Life has a funny way of giving you just enough rope to pull yourself out. Or hang your enemies with July 1st, 6 a.m. sharp. I climbed into my old postal van, cleaned it up, replaced the logos, and started the route. The neighborhood was still quiet, sprinklers hissing, sun crawling up behind the hills. When I turned into Willow Creek, I could see Karen out front, jogging in her neon tracksuit, earbuds in. She froze when she saw me. "Morning," I called, waving. She squinted. "John, what are you?" "Delivering mail," I said, smiling wide. "New contractor. You might see a lot of me around." The look on her face was priceless, like someone just told her the HOA bylaws were being rewritten in crayon. For the first few days, I did everything by the book. Perfect timing, perfect delivery, polite smile for everyone. Then came the real twist. See, as the route owner, I had authority to suspend service temporarily for safety or accessibility issues. If a mailbox was damaged, blocked, or didn't meet USPS standards, I could file a report and pause delivery until it was fixed. And guess which neighborhood had mailboxes that didn't meet standards? Yup. According to Karen's own HOA regulations, every mailbox in Willow Creek had to follow her custom design. Shorter posts, decorative tops, smaller boxes. Beautiful, sure, but they were all technically non-compliant with USPS clearance height requirements. So I filed the report. Due to ongoing accessibility concerns and non-standard mailbox installations, mail delivery to Willow Creek Estates is temporarily suspended pending correction. It wasn't personal. Okay, maybe a little personal. By the next morning, the HOA Facebook group was on fire. Why didn't we get mail? Did anyone get their packages? Who do we call? Karen tried to calm everyone down, posting, "We're in contact with USPS to resolve the issue." But she didn't know she was talking to me. 3 days passed. Then 7, then 10. Residents started driving miles to the nearest post office just to pick up their letters. One guy missed his property tax notice. Another missed a medication refill. Karen finally called me. Her voice had lost that polished marble tone. It sounded more like cracked glass. "John," she said, "you can't just stop mail delivery to an entire neighborhood." "I didn't stop it," I replied calmly. "USPS regulations did. You know Section 3.2? Mailbox height must be between 41 and 45 inches above road surface. Yours are 32. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "We've had these designs for years, and they've been out of compliance for years," I said. "Funny, I thought you'd appreciate following the rules." Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "How long until service resumes?" "As soon as the boxes are fixed," I said. "Oh, and any obstructed mailboxes, like ones blocked by decorative rocks or flower pots, will need clearance too. I could practically hear her grinding her teeth. The next day, HOA contractors swarmed the neighborhood, measuring, sawing, repainting. Karen stood there with her clipboard, barking orders while residents glared daggers at her. And me? I sat in my van at the cul-de-sac, sipping coffee, updating my route log. Every so often a neighbor would walk up and thank me, not realizing I was the one who triggered the suspension. They just thought I was the helpful new mailman. It was poetic. By week 2, people started turning on Karen. One woman shouted during an HOA meeting that she was tired of dictators in yoga pants running their lives. Another guy demanded refunds for all the fines he'd paid over the years. The rebellion had begun, and I just kept doing my job, patient, polite, methodical, delivering mail everywhere except Willow Creek. But things were about to get even more interesting. By the 3rd week, Karen finally cracked. I could tell from the way she walked, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. Not the proud strut she used to have when she paraded around with her clipboard. That morning she marched straight up to my truck as I was loading mail outside the post office. "John," she said, forcing a smile, "we've done everything you asked. All the mailboxes are fixed, repainted, adjusted to height. You can resume delivery now." I looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll need to inspect them myself, Karen. Standard procedure." She exhaled, the kind of sigh people give when they know they're no longer in charge. So that afternoon I drove through Willow Creek, clipboard in hand this time. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, whispering. Karen followed me the whole way like a watchdog, trying to stay civil. We stopped in front of her house. Her mailbox, bright ivory, perfectly aligned, shiny gold letters, looked flawless. I knelt down, measured the height, stepped back, wrote something on my form. She asked, "Well, are we good now?" I looked up at her. "Almost. You're still missing the reflective house numbers required for evening identification. It's a postal safety rule." Her face flushed red. "You've got to be kidding me." "Rules are rules," I said softly, smiling the same polite smile she'd given me months ago. The next morning, Willow Creek finally got its mail again. The residents cheered when they saw the truck return. Some even left thank you notes taped to their boxes. But Karen didn't smile. She knew she'd lost something. Authority, respect, maybe both. A few weeks later, I heard through the grapevine that the HOA board had called an emergency election. Seems the residents wanted a change in leadership. Karen was voted out, unanimously. I didn't celebrate, not really. Instead, I just went about my route, quiet and steady. I liked the rhythm of it. The hum of the engine, the shuffle of envelopes, the simplicity of delivering something people actually needed. There was peace in that. But karma wasn't done with Karen yet. One hot August afternoon, I pulled up to her place with a certified letter. She met me at the curb, clearly embarrassed but trying to play nice. "John," she said softly, "listen, I know we got off on the wrong foot. I was under a lot of pressure then." I shrugged. "We all were," she forced a smile. "Anyway, I wanted to thank you for helping restore order to the neighborhood." "Order?" I chuckled. "Funny choice of word." She looked down. "You know, people can change." "Maybe," I said, handing her the envelope. "But sometimes they just get replaced." She took it and walked away quietly. I didn't tell her what was inside, that the new HOA president had filed an internal audit of her spending, including some questionable landscaping contracts she'd signed with her cousin's company. 2 weeks later, her house went up for sale. I never saw her again, months passed, and life in Willow Creek settled into a calm I hadn't felt in years. Neighbors actually talked to each other again. People waved when I drove by. Some even planted flowers by their mailboxes. Bright colors. Mismatched styles, no longer uniform, but alive one day. Old Mr. Patterson down the street said, "John, this neighborhood's finally got some character back." I smiled. Guess it just needed to loosen its tie. Sometimes I'd think back to how ridiculous it all was. A crack in a mailbox turning into a neighborhood rebellion. But maybe that's how change really happens. Not with big speeches or protests, but with small moments of defiance. Tiny fractures in the routine that let the light slip through. Still, I can't lie. There was a certain satisfaction in knowing I'd beaten Karen at her own game. She used rules as weapons, and in the end, the rules took her down. One afternoon, while delivering along Birch Loop, I noticed a family moving into her old place, a young couple with 2 kids. The father waved at me, asked if there was any issue with the mailbox height. I laughed out loud. "Nah," I said, "that one's perfect." "Trust me," he grinned. "Good. We heard some stories about the last HOA lady." "Yeah," I said, climbing back into the truck. We all did. As I drove off, the sun dipped low over the desert hills, casting long gold shadows across the road. The air smelled like rain, rare in that part of Arizona. And for a moment I felt something close to peace. I thought about how crazy it was. I'd bought an entire postal route just to stand my ground. And somehow, it had fixed more than just my pride. It fixed the whole neighborhood. Sometimes when life tries to box you in, the best move isn't to fight harder. It's to change the rules of the game. You know, every now and then, people online hear this story and ask, was it worth it? All that trouble over a mailbox? And I tell them this, it was never about the mailbox. It was about respect. You can't let bullies, whether they wear a badge, a suit, or a name tag that says HOA president, decide how much dignity you're allowed to have. I didn't win by yelling or suing or stooping to their level. I just used what I knew, stayed patient, and waited for the moment when the power flipped itself upside down. Now every morning, when I pull up to that same old box, the one with the little crack still visible on the, do I run my hand over it like it's an old friend. Because that crack started it all. It's a reminder that some things don't need to be perfect to be strong, and to anyone who's ever been cornered by some HOA bully or petty boss or anyone who thinks rules make them untouchable, remember this. There's always a loophole if you know where to look, so what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have paid the fine, or would you have bought the whole damn route? Let me know in the comments, because I've got a feeling I'm not the only one who's had enough of people like Karen.